Hello and welcome to Airheads, a not-so-serious look at the serious business of royal rumours, gossip and gowns. I'm Tom.
And I'm Maeve.
And we are back with another episode of Barely Regal.
We really wanted to talk about Bridgerton Season 2, but we had so much going on in the recap of the Cambridge's Caribbean tour that we thought we'd split them up into two. So if you are just joining us now, we are talking exclusively about Bridgerton and the Gilded Age, the new period drama from Downton Abbey creator Julian Fellowes in this episode, and you can go check out the other one for all the stuff about Will and Kate.
It's going to be very spoiler heavy. We're going to talk about everything in Bridgerton Season 2 and everything in the Gilded Age. Every lost glove, every wrongly laid table, everything.
We will put timestamps in the episode notes, so if you just want to hear the Gilded Age part, you can skip ahead.
Yeah. But let's dive straight in. So, Bridgerton Season 2, it is based on the second book by Julia Quinn in the Bridgerton book series, The Viscount Who Loved Me.
And you guys might remember, if you listened to our episode last year, Bridgerton Season 1, that we were like kind of lukewarm on it, that both of us liked the book.
Yeah.
And I had read some of the other books, and we were quite curious about how the second season was going to adapt the second book, which is my favourite in the series, which is a lot of people's favourite in the series. So I read the book before watching Season 2 a few years ago. Tom read the book this week after watching Season 2.
Yes, exactly. And I mean, what I immediately noticed about this second instalment of Bridgerton is it's a lot less about cum.
Yeah.
And like, not only is there like a lot less sex in this season, which we will talk about, but also it doesn't have that like, we talked about it quite a lot when we were talking about Season 1 and the first book, this idea that Daphne wants to trap Simon into having a child that he doesn't seem to want to have.
Yeah, the consent issues do not feature here. So every season and every book in the Bridgerton series follows a different member of the Bridgerton family. Obviously, last season it was Daphne Bridgerton and the Duke of Hastings, Simon. The second book follows the eldest Bridgerton brother, Anthony Bridgerton, who's also the eldest in the family, and his heroine, the new to town, Kate Sharma, or Kate Sheffield. But I thought we could start off by talking about how we feel about each of the characters. So let's start with Kate.
Yes, so in Bridgerton Season 2, we have Kate Sharma. In the book, she's Kate Sheffield.
Yeah, and I was so eager for them to get someone good to play her because I was not a big fan of Phoebe Dynevor as Daphne in the first season. Didn't find her a very engaging lead. But, oh my God, Simone Ashley is so good. You might know her from Sex Education. That's the only thing I'd seen her in before. But I loved her in this. Obviously, she's extremely gorgeous, but she's also very funny, very good comic timing. And the character of Kate, I just love so much more. She's my favourite heroine in the Bridgerton books as well. She is smart and sexy and funny and manages, I think, in both the book and the show to, you know, selflessly put her family first without coming across like a martyr, to me at least.
Yeah, and I think the book does that particularly well because you get like so much more interiority and stuff. But yeah, I think the show portrays her so well as well.
And I think, you know, part of the reason that she's so interesting is like she's a little bit older. I mentioned 26. I'm like, oh, spinster. But she is a little bit older and, you know, she's the less sought after one. So maybe she's a little bit more relatable, even though she's still extremely gorgeous.
Yeah.
But yeah, she has a different birth mother from her sister Edwina, and that kind of puts a slightly different frame on it in terms of how she's treated by others and what she considers her role to be.
Yeah, I think one of the things that like really makes the relationship between Anthony and Kate work so well is that the two of them are so similar, and part of that is because they're both like the oldest children and they take on responsibility for their whole family's welfare, and they kind of have this self-sacrifice that inspires resentment from their siblings at times rather than gratitude. Like they would both rather kind of their family don't quite understand how much is at stake or how much they have to do to help them.
Kate is also obviously Indian.
Yeah.
And I think it's interesting to see Anglo-Indian aristocrats represented in the show. Although, like in season 1, there isn't much examination of racism or colorism. Simone Ashley did an interview with Tatler in which she said that she loves that there isn't focus on her heritage. She said, Kate comes from India, but what I love is no one comments on that. You follow the character's journey, not her heritage. There were, though, moments that pay tribute to her Desi culture, you know, things like her and her sister call each other Didi and Bon. Those kind of terms of address, which mean older sister and younger sister, aren't explained or translated, which I thought was like a nice touch.
Yeah, I liked when like Kate was bitching about English tea as well.
Oh my god, that was so funny.
Yeah.
When she was like this pathetic excuse for what the English people call tea, and she carries like a little sachet of spices to kind of surreptitiously make her own chai. I thought it was very funny.
Yeah, really good. And there's also kind of moments like when she gives her sister a shampoo oil massage, which is an Ayurvedic practice and is the origin of the word shampoo. And then when they perform a traditional haldi ceremony using turmeric paste before Edwina and Anthony's wedding that is not to be.
Yeah, and there's even like one of the songs is a Desi song that gets the kind of string quartet cover. So there are moments like that. In a way, I was kind of relieved that there wasn't a clunky scene like that one between Simon and Lady Danbury last season that was sort of just thrown in and then never addressed again.
Yeah. I think we kind of know maybe now what we should expect from Bridgerton when it comes to like how they deal with race in the universe of the show. Like you're saying, I liked the approach where they brought in these kind of traditions and the kind of language without over-explaining.
Yeah, and I think at the time that we're recording this, there hasn't been that much written about this season. I was looking at the Vulture recaps by Sandy Rangadua, and she mentioned some of those things about Desi culture, but there may be, you know, people with better insight into this than us that will write about it.
Yeah, exactly.
Anthony.
Yes, very charismatic and charming, I thought.
Oh dear, isn't he? Played by Jonathan Bailey, who is very well known as a West End star. Tom and I saw him in the revival of Company a few years ago. He was sensational. We're going to go see him soon in his new play Cock with Karen Edgerton, which I'm very excited about.
Really excited.
But yeah, I just love him so much. I know some people were like, oh, but he's just not as good looking as Reggie John Page.
And I mean, I don't think he's as much of a classic hunk.
As you reminded me countless times throughout the show, Tom brought it up almost every episode.
I mean, like, when you see him without his clothes on, you kind of get it.
Do you?
I believe. So I've been told. But he has a kind of very posh look to him, I guess.
He is very posh.
We've
seen him on RuPaul's Drag Race.
Yeah, and he is very posh. And I think that can, like, get in the way of the hunk factor for me.
I didn't mind it as much. I just think he's so handsome, and he did such a good job of selling what can be kind of a tricky arc for his character, particularly in terms of his phobia of bees.
Yeah.
You know, that's something that maybe could come across possibly a little silly by a less strong actor, but I thought he did such a good job delivering that fear and how it's tied into his grief over his father. And I really liked as well the scenes with Violet Bridgerton, his mother, when they got to talk about those kind of things.
Yeah.
But we will get onto the family dynamic later, because I also just have to say the two of them, Jonathan Bailey and Simone Ashley, had dynamite chemistry. This was such a big problem for me in the first season and I was thrilled.
Yeah, they acted like so well off each other, which is so important for their relationship because it's so much based on these kind of like verbal sparring matches.
And it's quite a slow burn.
Yeah. I mean, especially in the way they did it in the TV show, which we'll talk about in a sec. But I also really appreciated Anthony's face every time he smelled her intoxicating scent of lilies and soap.
Like Edward Cullen.
Yeah, it did like really intense Edward Cullen face.
Yeah. But, you know, they didn't get to actually consummate their relationship for so long in this show that he had to go the extra mile with those moments. And I think, you know, particularly because you have the enemies to lovers trope here, that kind of flirtatious arguing and sparring, like you mentioned, is such a massive part of it.
Yeah.
Such a hallmark of their relationship. That's what people love about their relationship. And sometimes it doesn't translate as well on screen. Like maybe anyone that watched the Hating Game with Lucy Hale.
Or the like 20 minutes that we managed to sit through before turning it off.
It can be easier to do in a book.
Yeah, because you have that interiority and you see them falling in love without knowing it or not wanting to admit it to themselves, even though they're not showing it on the outside. But yeah, they were certainly very convincingly vexed in the show, I thought.
Yeah, and even in the finale, Kate says to Anthony, "You do know there will never be a day where you do not vex me." And Anthony replies,
"Is that a promise, Kathani Sharma?"
But I thought it was sweet to hear him use her full given name.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I was just swooning over these two the whole time. But
I'm going to say it. I think it suffered from the lack of sex.
I was very confused about this. This was my biggest question after we watched, was what is with this very conspicuous absence of sex scenes?
Like, where was the bodice ripping? Like, it's a sexy book. Like, there's lots of sex scenes in it. And they were just taken out.
I think, you know, a big part of that is the change they made to the storyline when adapting it. You know, in the book, for example, when Kate gets stung by the bee, Anthony is then caught trying to suck the poison out of the bee sting on Kate's collarbone.
Yeah. So, like, you have, like, Lady Featherington being like, he's got his lips on your breast.
And so they're caught in this kind of compromising position and they have to get married. Something similar happens in this season and happened in season 1 as well. But in the show, we spend almost all of the season with Anthony either pursuing or engaged to Edwina, and it's only in episode 7 that Anthony and Kate have sex, finally. But I think this change, I can understand why they did it, because it is a Shondaland production from Shonda Rhimes' production company, and her shows tend to be overstuffed with drama, and that is the kind of soapy nature of her shows.
Yeah.
So I can see why they may have felt that this storyline needed more obstacles to make it a more dramatic storyline, but I way prefer the book version for how it showed how their relationship developed.
Yeah, and you get to spend time with them as a couple, because they both have these terrible fears. You have Kate's fear of lightning and storms, and you have Anthony's fear of bees, and all tied up in his own mortality and thinking he won't outlive his father. And in the book, you get them married, they're together, they know about each other's fears, and then they're able to like help each other with them and break them down, and it brings them so close, and you really get the feeling that like they're made for each other, even beyond the kind of very flirtatious verbal sparring that we've mentioned, but they have this like deep-seated connection when they're in a very vulnerable state.
Yeah, and I mean, when I was watching it, I was thinking, does this actress have a no nudity clause in her contract or something? It is very strange compared to season 1, how little sex there is. But then the sex scene in the 7th episode and then the nudity in the 8th episode would suggest that's absolutely not the case.
Yeah.
One thing I did think was funny was that Jonathan Bailey was giving interviews, and he said that when they film the sex scenes, they use a deflated netball as a prop.
Wow.
So they're not touching. But anyway, because of that, by the 8th episode, when her breasts were exposed, I was like, wait, she's like comfortable with showing her nipples, but they only had one sex scene, one quite frantically edited sex scene. Still sexy, but you know, it sent a message to me that Bridgerton as a show wanted to distance itself from sex.
Yeah, and the showrunner, Chris Van Dusen, said that he wouldn't necessarily call it a more subdued approach in this season.
Well, I would.
I mean, yeah, I would. But he said, the steamy moments are just as sexy and scandalous as season 1, as far as the longing looks across the room and the near finger grazes and the hand touches. I think all of that adds to the sexual tension that you feel this season, and you just see it build. And you feel it build and build from scene to scene, from episode to episode. And I say that's bullshit. Because I did think that they had chemistry, and I was, rooting for them and all of that. But longing looks just don't cut it. I mean, this is a show that uses anachronisms throughout to evoke responses in like a modern audience that would be similar to people at the time. Things like the classical covers of modern pop songs and elements of like the costumes, makeup and wigs. They're all like designed for us to like recognize them and think like, oh wow, what an incredible party. So I don't think that people watching are going to be satisfied with like hand touches and things.
Yeah, and as well, I think along with the wigs and the crazy costumes and the classical covers of songs, the sex scenes goes hand in hand with those as something that people loved about the first season and what set Bridgerton apart from other period dramas.
From Downton Abbey.
Yes. So to remove that element from it, I do think it makes it slightly less fun, a little bit more staid, a little bit more traditional of a period drama. And I just can't understand why they would do it unless it was a purposeful response to all the craze around the sex scenes in the first season. And I can't understand why they wouldn't want to embrace that. Because they got, as well as people being like, wow, this is like... what do they call it? Like Bonkerton or something. Like, as well as that kind of stupid stuff, people were really praising it because of the use of intimacy coordinators
netballs
and how it centralized female pleasure and things like that aren't so often seen, especially in period dramas. Even in the fucking Bridgerton books, that's not a big priority. So it just seemed to me like a really strange, ill-advised move. And what disappointed me even more was that all the cast and the showrunner seem to be suggesting like this is the new direction they're going forward with. And that this is what we're going to get in season 3 and 4.
But yeah, I sort of worried that like it's almost like a bit disdainful of the source text if they're trying to like move away from it being sexy. Trying to make a romance show that is not just a romance, And I think it kind of goes maybe hand in hand with the Shondaland hallmark of like multiple storylines and a lot going on, loads of drama. But I think there's a risk of the romance being lost in it.
And I think, when you're mentioning subplots and extra storylines, that's where a lot of the sex was in the first season as well.
Yeah.
Like, as well as Daphne and Simon, you had Anthony and the opera singer, his name I can't remember, and Benedict and his array of lovers.
His, like, sex parties that he went to.
There was a lot of sex from those storylines as well.
And some of it was gay.
Oh, let's not get started on the erosion of the queerness from this show just now, but we will be returning to this. I just think overall, and we are going on about this because it is dominating the conversation around this, and it was the real standout to me. Not only is it a departure from the source text, it's so different from what people saw as one of the defining features of the show, part of Bridgerton's DNA as a TV series.
But, it does remain true to the book in some areas, and one of those is the big croquet match. Or pêle-mêle, as they call it in France. But yeah, this was like a real showcase of the famous and I think beloved by fans of the books, Bridgerton family dynamic.
Yeah, and everybody loves the pêle-mêle scene, and I think it sticks the landing in the show. But before we get on to that, we've got to address the elephant on the lawn, which is the very conspicuous absence of Simon, the Duke of Hastings.
Yes, so this is Reggie Jim Page's character, not in this series, not at all.
Made it very clear that he was quitting the show. He was not interested in coming back for any cameos after the first season. I think there was all this story about how he left the WhatsApp group chat.
Wow.
That he was done and dusted. And, I didn't think that would be like that big of a deal. But watching this season, Daphne is in it quite a lot.
Yeah.
And it is very notable when he's not there and people are like, oh, he's just at home or whatever.
He's just in the other room. But you never see him.
The way her scenes are structured, it would just make so much sense for him to be there, and actually is quite distracting.
Yeah.
The fact that he's not there.
And like, in the book, the croquet match, he is there as well. He's playing with them. It is like a nice touch when you're building this like universe of romances that he's there and he's like still just as like devoted to Daphne, and they have this kind of great relationship still. And I think that kind of thing does add to the universe. But yes, he's not in the show, and it does make this author wonder, with no evidence at all, whether the good Duke had some reason for not wanting to return to the Ton.
Wow.
Yeah.
Watch out, Julie Andrews.
That's my audition reel. But
do you think a James Bondian reason?
Ooh.
I don't. I'm just wondering, did you want to speculate? No, you're just going to...
Maybe he just wanted to keep his entire calendar free in case they did ask him to audition for it.
And then instead he ended up narrating nature documentaries for Netflix.
Yeah.
Anyway, I wish him all the best, but it would have been so much nicer if he just popped in for a couple of scenes.
Scene.
Yeah,
one scene even.
Anyway, once we got past his absence...
Which we clearly haven't got past.
We did really... Well, I certainly enjoyed the Pall Mall scene.
Yeah. I think it's like, as an activity and as a scene, like it's such a good sink or swim test for someone entering the Bridgerton family. And I think it was a really good way of showing the family's closeness, having them being like very competitive with each other and like letting their guards down and not like bothering with like manners and seniority and stuff. It felt like a very real look at a family.
Yeah, and I think, there are a lot of other elements of the family dynamic that are represented in this scene. Like, we do get another instance of Eloise and Benedict chatting on the swings. Like, that was one of the bits that we liked in the first season,
yeah.
I think. And we saw a friendship starting to be developed between Daphne and Kate and Eloise and Edwina.
Yeah.
And I think, that's very important because the Bridgertons are such a close family.
Yeah, and it's important to show that they're not close in like a way that is impenetrable or hostile to outsiders. Like, they have this kind of welcoming sort of chaos to the family dynamic, which I think comes across as very appealing in the show, but also very intense, I imagine. Like, you can tell in it that like Kate is more able to hold her own in this environment than Edwina is, for example.
Yeah. And I do think it's important as well to establish that because the later seasons are going to focus on different members of the family. So we have to find those family members attractive, and a good way to do that is through showing the dynamic. But because we're calling this the Barely Regal episode, we've got to talk about the tenuous royal connection, which is what is the Queen up to this season, Queen Charlotte.
Yeah, so she's mainly stressing about Lady Whistledown, although we also have some of the storyline of her husband, King George III, who he had some form of dementia, and we get like another kind of quite moving, well, I found it quite moving section where she's kind of not necessarily facing the reality, but everybody else sees the reality of what their relationship has become.
But I think her kind of main storyline this season, similar to last season, is that she's desperate to find out who Lady Whistledown is. And it, yet again, brings her into contact with Eloise Bridgerton, who also wants to find out the identity of Lady Whistledown. But in this case, she ends up being mistaken for Lady Whistledown by the Queen.
Yeah, so like we as the audience know that Penelope Featherington, played by Nicola Coughlan, is Lady Whistledown, and so she gets a lot more to do, and we see a lot more of the technical side of publishing a newsletter or a newspaper at this time, especially for like one woman on her own. Like, I thought Nicola Coughlan was so good, and I think it's really important that she's good because she's kind of emerging as like a main character. Yeah,
she is the center of the show because she's going to be featured heavily every season as Lady Whistledown. Obviously, in season 4, when it focuses on her relationship with Colin, she's going to be the main character.
Yeah.
But she's going to be in it a lot more than, obviously, Daphne was this season, or presumably that Anthony will be next season.
Yeah, and I thought it was interesting this season, like, as well as the practicalities of like when she writes and how she gets it all printed and how much money she makes, the show like begins to interrogate the purpose of a gossip magazine like Lady Whistledown. And like the reason Eloise is looking for her is not to stop her publishing outright, but to talk to her about how she could use her large readership for a better cause, or what she sees as a better cause.
Yeah, and I think in the first season, it really seemed like Lady Whistledown's society papers were a way of giving woman agency in a time we shouldn't really have it. It also functioned as a way to expose or shed light on the actions of the upper class.
Yeah, and the show really seemed to take a view that gossip is a way to punch upwards.
Or to distribute information that the ruling class would rather suppress, something that we can get on board with, and holding those people accountable for actions that may be dodgy or, you know, not strictly illegal, but
still shouldn't be doing them, you know. But yeah, I think those ideas are kind of developed in this second season a bit. Like Eloise starts to see Lady Whistledown society papers as vapid and shallow and unconcerned with the real problems of their time. And it raises, like, I think, the flip side of gossip. So the other side of all that is that gossip reinforces the idea that these are the kinds of people worth talking about, and these are the kind of things that are worth talking about.
Yeah, and I think, you know, it's no longer enough for Eloise that Lady Whistledown represents the success of a woman writer and a woman entrepreneur. Now there are slight overtones of tabloid culture creeping in, especially when they talk about Lady Whistledown profiting from reporting on other people's misfortunes or humiliating others. Instead, it is the writing of Mary Wollstonecraft that now inspires Eloise.
Yeah, and then she kind of moves on to like even more left-wing pamphlets, and the author of said pamphlets,
For fuck's sake,
that she comes across at the printer that she's like got under surveillance because she thinks Lady Whistledown's going there. And like we do see Penelope start to bring more of a political and feminist critique into her writing. And it is like genuinely, I thought, quite sad to see her friend kind of unknowingly move on from the admiration that she had for her work. And like when she then works it all out at the end after Lady Whistledown has published Eloise's own scandal, it's like devastating, I thought. Like the two of them have such a good like chemistry that I was really like invested in the breakdown of their relationship.
Yeah, and that relationship is another through line in the show that is going to sustain throughout, you know, up to season 5 when we get Eloise's story, you know, that it's going to continue as long as the show runs. So to see the big blowout fight they have is really upsetting. I did think as the season went on, it started to become more interested in that storyline and what was going on between Eloise and Penelope rather than the relationship and marriage of Kate and Anthony.
Yeah, because it was like the last 2 episodes of the season really that Kate and Anthony are together, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's also the time when this big fight happens, or like Eloise, like the penny drops for her that Penelope is Lady Whistledown, and like the stakes on that storyline get massively ramped up.
Yeah.
And so we end up just not spending that much time with Kate and Anthony as a couple who are together.
Yeah, and, you know, I think it's a bit complicated, you know, the tabloid associations and all that, but I was still happy, not surprised, but happy that Penelope resolved to continue writing the Lady Whistledown papers.
Oh, yeah, I mean, I was definitely pleased as well. Like, I think as people who are interested in the royal family, like, none of us can say that we don't love gossip on some level, even if we, you know, would like to pretend otherwise. But yeah, I think it's notable as well that the Queen is way more worried about what Lady Whistledown will write than the radical pamphlets that Eloise is reading. Like, as well as, you know, having this general worry about people in the upper classes' reputation and things like that, the show highlights that a major source for Lady Whistledown is gossip amongst servants, and it's like something that is virtually impossible for the Queen and other nobles to control. Like, they rely on these people to do everything for them, but they cannot prevent them from talking to each other and spreading gossip, which I think is, yeah, like, important. And as a result of Penelope's specific situation, she poses this double threat where she's listening to the servants, but she also has access to places as a member of high society. And, that's why you get the Queen's worry that Lady Whistledown could be one of us, which is like a big moment that I think was even in the trailer.
Yeah. One of the other moments with the Queen that I thought was interesting was when she was showing Edwina some of the crown jewels. And she was talking about the physical symbols that make the monarchy real, in the same way that Lady Whistledown's physical gossip sheet makes both the gossip and her own power real.
Yeah, I thought it was like very interesting parallels between the monarchy and like tabloid or gossip culture, like both things that rely on these physical symbols.
I don't know if I agree.
Right.
I feel like royals have such a mythic status now that we only see them wearing crowns and stuff a couple of times a year.
Yeah.
But they maintain the royal magic all year long.
Well, yeah, I wonder if like nowadays it's different things than necessarily crown jewels that have been imbued with that kind of status. Like it's like the Queen's all block colour outfits, like that make such a like instantly recognisable image and things like that. So yeah, I guess it's kind of expanded from jewellery and those kind of very traditional symbols to things which are maybe more palatable in the 21st century.
Yeah. Last year when we did this episode talking about season 1, we ran down a list of what we wanted for season 2. So I thought we could maybe go back through that list and see if it did or did not deliver. So first on the list was a Kate Sheffield that is magnetic and engaging.
Check. Yeah, we got that. Even if like the storyline change slightly limited the opportunity to show.
Yeah, and I just loved watching her. Like, I loved the scene at the races where she was like going crazy cheering on the horses. Obviously loved all her scenes with Anthony. I hope she comes back for some cameos next season.
Yeah, because there's always going to be like annoying, smarmy, aristocratic men that she needs to put down with her superior knowledge of things like horses and stuff and hunting.
And oh my god, Newton. We haven't talked about Newton.
Oh god, we haven't even talked about Newton. Oh,
we are such big fans of Newton. Yeah. I love corgis anyway. It's not a surprise we're doing a podcast about the royals. But I love Newton in the book, and I was wondering how they were going to integrate Newton in the TV show, and they did it so well, I thought.
Could have been more of him.
Yeah.
But we'll always say that about dog characters.
But like, I love the bit in the book where somebody trips over Newton and falls into the pond or the lake or whatever.
The Serpentine.
Oh my gosh, the Serpentine, of course. And they sort of changed it a little bit in this one, but they still had the same general gist. And of course, that was what led to us getting the Anthony Bridgerton Colin Firth Mr. Darcy moment, getting out of the lake. So thank you, Newton.
Yeah, thank you. There's a really good scene in the book where Newton and Anthony are like kind of bonding.
So cute.
And Newton eats one of Kate's hats that Anthony doesn't like her to wear.
Oh,
it's really nice.
That's very sweet.
But yeah, big fans of Newton.
And Kate, overall.
Yes.
And Simone Ashley's performance as Kate.
Yes. So another thing on the list was more recognition of race and acknowledgement of characters like Lady Danbury outside of propping up the leads. Well, we certainly got a lot more Lady Danbury in this season than we did in the first season, played by Adjoa Andoh, and I think she kind of really went to town on this role. Like, I think she kind of overacted it. Like, I don't remember her being quite this extra in the first season, because I think I wanted more Lady Danbury after the first season, and now I feel I've got too much.
Yeah, and I feel like that kind of overacting, there's sort of a delicate balance there, because as we will talk about later, we love Nathan Lane in the Gilded Age. Yeah. But I felt like here it didn't always work for me. I did like her scenes where it was just her and Kate, and I thought like their bond was quite nice. Like, I think it was, she's talking to her when she's talking about like the pathetic excuse for English tea or whatever.
Yeah.
And they also are able to like speak frankly about things that she can't talk about with her stepmother and sister. But at the same time, in the like group scenes and stuff, I guess she wanted to chew up all the scenery, and I didn't love this performance.
Yeah, I think it's a shame because in those kind of group settings, I felt like she was going for like Maggie Smith in Downton kind of like archness or something. And I've never seen this actor. I've seen her in lots of other things because she's been in like everything in British TV from like Holby City upwards. And I've never seen her acting like that before. And I just feel like she seems a lot more like herself or like her other performances when, like you're saying, she's talking to Kate specifically.
Yeah, and I did think that was a much better way of incorporating her character, so she wasn't as much on the margins as she was of the storylines last season. Like to, you know, in the book, the Sheffields, Kate's family, don't stay with her, but I thought that change actually worked very well for the TV show.
Yeah.
But you know, like I was saying earlier, we didn't get a scene where, like last season when Lady Danbury and Simon were talking about what it was like to be black in high society. We didn't get any more discussions about how race shapes their experiences. I think there was like maybe a slight nod to it when the Queen is showing Edwina the crown jewels, and Edwina tells the Queen that like she really admires the relationship that the Queen and the King had, and obviously they were an interracial relationship, so that was maybe a sort of acknowledgement of that, given the fact that Edwina and Anthony would also be an interracial relationship. But it was quite a subtle acknowledgement, if that's what it was.
Yeah, and I was kind of expecting as we were watching to find out a bit more about India and its place in an empire that is under a black queen. Which we didn't get any of that at all. But I think after this season, we maybe understand better what Bridgerton is trying to do and what it's not trying to do.
Yeah.
With how it discusses race on the show.
Yeah, and I, as we were saying earlier, I will be interested to see if people write about this, you know, and speak about it a lot more articulately than we do.
Yeah, like who the fuck cares what I think about this?
Another thing that we were looking out for this season was better representation of the Bridgerton family dynamic. And I do think we got that.
Yeah, and it was in a way that really made sense, I think, for the romance. Like, Anthony's character is so wrapped up in familial duty and love, and I think they conveyed that really well within the Bridgerton family. Kate is as well, and so bringing her into the fold, they did it pretty expertly, I thought.
Yeah, and like we were saying, you know, you got more glimpses into the relationships that we saw in the first season, like between Daphne and Anthony, and then between Eloise and Benedict, a little bit between the three brothers. I have to say, Colin's storyline this season...
It's great, yeah. So compelling.
Almost as good as his goatee, right?
Oh my god, yeah. Yeah, I kind of like... Oh, Penelope, I wish she had a better one on the horizon.
I know, and I sort of understand that they need to kind of keep all these balls in the air so that when it does come around to their season that you're still sort of... You want to come back and watch, because if it was just totally focused on the central couple, then like with Reggie John Page, like when he's not in anymore, what is the reason, like what is drawing you back to watch it again?
Yeah.
It's because you maybe liked Anthony in the first season, or God knows who this would be, but maybe you liked Benedict in the second season and you want to see what's up in store for him in season 3. But you know, I guess that's how they keep the audience coming back for more. But since I mentioned Benedict.
Yeah. So one of the things we had on our list was we wanted clarity on Benedict's storyline. Like, was the show hinting he's queer, or was it just equating his relationship with someone outside his social class to a same-sex relationship? And what they've done in this season is make it very clear that he is not queer, right?
They would seem to be strongly implying that that's the case.
He certainly no longer goes to the bisexual orgies that he frequented in the first season.
Yeah, it seemed to me like the show was determined to wipe out any suggestion of queerness, which was another thing, like the sex scenes and the wigs and the classical covers of pop songs, that made the first season so exciting for people.
Yeah.
It was like, oh my God, a period drama where there are queer characters that aren't like, you know, miserable butlers like Thomas in Downton Abbey.
Yeah.
You know, but in this case, he is like painting naked women and having a
Only
sexy
women.
affair with the nude model / artist.
And the only kind of hint of his like libertine nature really is that he'll have like a glass of red wine while he does his painting. Like it's such like totally different speed.
Wait. He also seems to do some sort of hallucinogenic drug when Colin gives him that tea with some mysterious substance he's brought back from his travels, and he's like tripping balls at the family dinner.
But like even with that, he's gone from being like someone who's like seeking out new experiences to someone who's like, his boring brother's come back from a gap year with like some drug he found on his travels. It's definitely some kind of like naff shit for tourists. Like
yeah, his brother with his like horrible gap year goatee.
Yeah, which I guess is like actually all very funny and stuff that we laughed at a lot with the Colin stuff, but you know, it didn't fill me with like a great desire to see him as a romantic lead. But maybe that'll change in the third season. I mean, I didn't feel a great desire to see either Benedict or Colin as romantic leads.
We mainly wanted clarity about his sexuality, and I was interested. I was reading an interview with Luke Thompson, who plays Benedict, and he was asked about, is Benedict perhaps bisexual? And his answer was like incredibly vague. He was like, I think he's a very open character. He's got this lovely openness, so you feel he could go anywhere, but he also has this sort of mystery. Like, okay.
I do not feel like this character has any mystery anymore.
I mean, I guess the big thing is that he found out that Anthony is paying for his art residency. What was it?
Yeah, he gave like a big donation, and that's why they let him on the course.
So now he's like, oh, I'm going to make it for myself. And this is kind of setting up for in the third book when he's kind of like, I'm, you know, fuck my family. I'm going to be my own man. And then he, you know, his storyline is very weird and very isolated from the rest of his family. So I'm very intrigued to see how they're going to set that up.
Well,
but I guess
change it all.
But I guess they wanted to, you know, eliminate any concerns about his sexuality because he's going like full hetero in season 3. But this also bothered me about Eloise. And they gave her that like romance that just did nothing for me with the
Printing man.
The socialist.
Yeah.
It just was so frustrating because, you know, we know what these books are about. And it's not like at the time queer people would have had loads of opportunities to have relationships or have sex or flirt with people of the same sex. So it's not like we're expecting that, oh, suddenly actually the third season is about Benedict marrying a man.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah.
I understand that's not going to happen. But I think you can explore them being queer without having this weird, like, actually, no, they're both going to have opposite sex relationships this season. So, you know, forget about any of that potential queerness because that's not what we're interested in here.
Yeah, I think it's just disappointing that what the show seems to be positioning itself as being interested in is like all the stuff which is maybe least interesting about Bridgerton.
And that seemed, again, like the sex to be like a smackdown almost. And again, bringing it back to more traditional period dramas.
Yeah.
So that just really bothered me.
Yeah, no, I agree. We had also wanted better hair in season 2. And I don't think we really got it. I mean, the Queen's wigs are still amazing.
Yeah.
But everybody else...
I mean, I think we were mostly bothered by Daphne's little bitty fringe.
Yeah.
And I would say both Kate and Anthony had fantastic hair all season. So.
And Edwina.
Yes, and Edwina. Unfortunately, Colin's goatee was...
incredible.
Sorry, yes. The final thing we wanted was Julie Andrews to stick around. Check.
Delighted with that. So, what do we want then going into season 3?
Well, like I was saying, season 3 is going to be Benedict's season. And if you've read the third book, you probably know that it involves Benedict cutting himself off, travelling away from London, away from his family, and getting involved in a relationship with a woman. I'm not going to give any spoilers, but just that he's quite isolated from the rest of his family. So I'm curious about how they're going to do that in a way that keeps this kind of ensemble storytelling that they've been doing over the last 2 seasons. And also, I'm not enthusiastic about Benedict as a romantic lead.
I'm certainly not confident that this character and this actor can sustain me for a whole season.
Yeah, like there were times watching the first season, as we said, that Daphne was so drippy that I was not moved to keep watching.
Yeah.
Didn't have that problem this season because I like the lead so much, but I fear that will be an obstacle in season 3.
Yeah. Especially as like we've seen a lot of Benedict over these 2 seasons. So you know, you would have hoped that we'd seen enough to be like intrigued, but like, that hasn't really happened. So they're going to have to pull off, I think, a miracle for me to be into this next season.
He's just so unconvincing as this like wild bohemian artist.
Yeah.
Like he's not selling it.
No. But I think there are other things that could, you know, spice the season up. Like, I think the show is obviously very invested in the relationship between Eloise and Penelope. I'm very on board with that. I found it very compelling. Presumably they're going to need to patch up this relationship in some way. So I don't know how they're going to do that.
Yeah, I think that's one of the big things going into next season. Also, the Featheringtons' financial situation. They're kind of back to where they were at the start of last season.
Oh, yeah.
Now that your man is gone. So the Featherington stuff, you know, I love Polly Walker in that part. She's so good. I think that's going to be interesting where they go with that. I think there's definitely potential for Eloise to maybe have another fling this season. And another big thing, of course, is that in the final moments of the finale, Penelope overhears Colin making some extremely rude remarks about her.
Oh, yeah.
And she's obviously been obsessed with him since she was a child. And now this, you know, rosy tinted view of him that she's had has been shattered. Mm-hmm. So I think that's going to be quite interesting now that she's no longer like totally romanticizing everything about him and she can kind of see him as a real person.
And not perhaps so enamoured of the whole Bridgerton family.
Oh, yeah, true.
You know, they've largely avoided any major takedowns by Lady Whistledown. So, you know, they might be fair game.
But yeah, I do hope that, I'm sure Anthony Bridgerton will still be a big part of next season, but I also hope we see Simone, Ashley, I hope we see Kate and Newton and Edwina again.
Yeah.
Especially because the Queen said that she wants to set up Edwina with her hunky nephew.
Oh, yeah.
So,
from the first season. Cool.
That would be a fun subplot.
Yeah.
But yeah, so this season of Bridgerton, for me, major step up from season 1.
In some regards.
In most regards.
Yeah.
Also did justice to the book, mostly for me, and just generally enjoyed watching it. Even if I didn't love everything it did, I found it a lot more engaging and entertaining than the first season.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I thought there were some like really, really good moments in it. And I think that even while they're stripping out some of the things that I think were really interesting about it, I think they are like putting a lot of interesting stuff in it as well, like especially in the relationship between Penelope and Eloise and the role of gossip and stuff like that. I'm really interested in all that. So yeah, I really enjoyed watching it. But something else that I really enjoyed watching and that we're going to get onto now is The Gilded Age. This is, of course, the new period drama on HBO by Julian Fellowes, who's the creator of Downton Abbey.
Yeah, and we have seen a few Julian Fellowes period dramas since Downton Abbey, but this is kind of the most anticipated because it's a mega budget HBO production. Also, it's American, which is something very different. And one of the co-directors for the season, so there's 2, there's Michael Engler, but also Sally Richardson, who is a Black American director. And I think it's very interesting to have her perspective, especially because this storyline deals with the Black elite in a way that I haven't seen Julian Fellowes do before, and which, you know, I wouldn't trust him to do without the input of some Black creatives.
Yeah, no, it's definitely good that he didn't try to do that alone.
So we are going to be talking full spoilers for all 9 episodes of this season. Mm-hmm. It begins in 1882 when we see Marion Brooke, who is played by Louisa Jacobson, the daughter of Meryl Streep, being left penniless by her scoundrel father and having to move in with her aunts, Agnes and Ada Van Ryn. So I thought maybe the easiest way to talk about this would be, similar to Bridgerton, to break it down by family. And we can talk about our favourite moments from each of the characters, starting with the Van Ryns and the Brooks family.
So the head of the family, played by Christine Baranski, is Aunt Agnes. And I think we see Christine Baranski in basically one room for 80% of this show, right?
I'd say 95% of this show. I kind of like to imagine that she said she would do the show only if she could stay on the couch for the whole time.
And she absolutely stuck to it.
And, sometimes I minded, but also I just love watching her so much. I loved her on The Good Wife, obsessed with her on The Good Fight, which also stars Audra McDonald, who is also on this show. We'll talk about her in a minute. But I was just so excited to watch her. And I think, she's kind of got the Dowager Countess Maggie Smith role.
Yeah.
And I think she did a terrific job. She has, some kind of exposition heavy lines, which she delivers quite well, but she also has some killer one-liners. Some of the one-liners that I particularly liked was when she said, "I haven't been thrilled since 1865.
Yeah, really good line. Very much in that, Dowager Countess vein. But obviously when you have Christine Baranski, she brings her entire being to the role. And, she's always capable of making something entirely her own. And I do think she did that with this, despite... I do think that this show suffers from lazy writing at times. And I think it happened as much to her character as it did to any others. And I think that Christine Baranski definitely managed to deliver despite being let down sometimes. But in terms of her quipping at Ada, her sister, who's played by Cynthia Nixon, we should talk about this absolute simpleton of a character.
In the early episodes, she's certainly got elements of simpletonness.
Yeah.
Because I was so surprised to see Cynthia Nixon in this role. And she has done a few period dramas before. It's not like it's not unusual. But to come straight off the back of And Just Like That, the Sex and the City reboot, which admittedly I only watched 2 episodes of because I couldn't put up with it at all. But to go from Miranda to this is major gear shift.
Yeah.
And her main kind of mode in the first few episodes of the season was just sort of like a light giggle.
Yeah, a sort of slightly she's not quite in the room sort of giggle.
But then as it went on, she suddenly became quite shrewd.
Because, Maeve, she is emotionally intelligent.
But I don't know that she was. In the finale, when she sees Peggy carrying the 2 bags and she recognises that one of the bags is for Marion. That
is not the same Aunt Ada from episode 1.
Yeah, and she makes that sort of cryptic comment.
Yeah.
I don't know. I much prefer that version of Ada. I'm excited that she's sort of arrived at that point and now we can move into season 2 with that.
Yeah, because it was weird, she had that whole storyline where this guy turns up from her past saying that he's always been in love with her, but actually he's just after her money, which she doesn't actually have, and then he goes away. And it's she needs to be protected by Christine Baranski's character because she is so unworldly that she can't she's too trusting of people and she can't see the bad in people. And then by the end of the season she's this guy is all about society. I can
see right through Mr. Rakes.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
a bit uneven. But I'm glad where we ended up.
Exactly, yeah. And it'll be good for season 2. We also have Aunt Agnes's son, Oscar Van Ryn. Oscar the aged twink.
I was so mad about this character because I was very excited that we would have this gay character who was in the upper class, was the son of Christine Baranski's character, and yet Julian Fellowes managed to make him so fucking boring.
Well, it started out okay because he did his trademark Julian Fellowes thing of get to the end of the first episode, and in the last 2 minutes, boom, secret gaze, if you hadn't already worked it out.
Yeah,
But
so
then
he
from
has this
there-
like apartment with his boyfriend. But yeah, then from there, they had very little going on. Oscar was sort of plotting to get engaged to a wealthy woman, basically to find a beard for himself. And his boyfriend was so unsupportive of his idea. Like, that just felt to me so incredibly unrealistic. Like, I feel like that's exactly what you'd want. So you could continue
Yeah.
your relationship with the kind of security that people wouldn't be asking questions as you got older.
And also the financial security that Oscar is like so dead set on getting as well.
Yeah, but then I did actually like in the last couple of episodes, like when they went to Newport and he was telling his boyfriend, like, don't come basically. And then his boyfriend just showed up.
Yeah.
Which was, I thought, good mischief to revive things at the last moment.
But we should talk about the absolute dead weight of the Van Ryn family.
Oh my God. Marion Brooks.
Yeah.
The whole show centers on this girl who is giving nothing.
Yeah.
And, you know, I first of all think it's so funny that she's credited as Louisa Jacobson rather than Streep or Gummer. Because the minute we were watching, I was like, this girl
This is a Gummer.
I said to you, I was like, she's got like a look of a Gummer about her.
Yeah.
But we've watched lots of stuff with the other Gummers. We've seen them at the theatre once coming out.
Yeah.
But I didn't know that there was a third Gummer.
And that's what she wanted. She didn't want you to know.
And yet I clocked her immediately and it turned out she was a Gummer. But my God, she is the weakest link in this cast, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Which is such a pity because she is given so much to do. Like, she's meant to have this quite wicked sense of humour, but you doesn't really land any of her quips.
Yeah. And, like, she has her own storyline, this, like, romance with Mr. Rakes that ends up hurting her. But she's kind of, like, present in a lot of other storylines and things. Or, like, her storyline is, like, very sprawling and involves lots of characters. So she's, like, always there in everything. But, yeah, let's talk about the, like, main focus, which is her relationship with Rakes.
So this is the lawyer who tells her that she's out of money because her dad didn't leave her a penny. And he then resurfaces when she moves to New York and suddenly wants to ingratiate himself in New York society. And I just felt like they had no chemistry whatsoever.
Yeah.
He was like a dud of a romantic interest and she was giving nothing. Like, I guess you were meant to think that she was like catastrophically horny for this man and they had like at least one steamy kiss that zero heat for me personally. But that was kind of the major arc of the season and the major tension of the season was whether she was going to abandon her only remaining family for this interloper. And it just didn't really make the impact that it needed to make because neither of them were really selling the relationship and I could never really tell whether she actually loved him, whether she just wanted to have sex.
Yeah, and I think because it was always very clear what the outcome of the relationship was going to be. Like, I think I have no problem with knowing how a storyline is going to resolve. Like, I've watched all of Downton Abbey. Like, it's not a problem for me. But, like, you just need those performances to sell it. Like, I'm in there for the journey, not the destination, guys.
Yeah.
And with those two in particular, it just, they gave you nothing on the journey.
Yeah, and I do think, you know, she had a lot of interesting relationships with the other characters, and she really is positioned as the heart of the show. But I feel like we've got a long way to go before she can carry the show the way it wants her to.
We need a heart transplant. That's what I say.
Tom, that's so true. Can we talk about my favourite character? Moving on to the Russells.
Mm-hmm.
Bertha, played by Carrie Coon, who is one of my favourite actresses. And oh my God, she's just sensational in this role.
Truly the most standout and breathtaking performance of the whole show.
And I think at this point we have to mention the costume design.
Oh, yeah, because, like, Carrie Coon's character Bertha is, like, definitely someone that the costume designers loved creating outfits for, because they're just able to do like whatever they wanted, and she just looked absolutely incredible in everything.
Well, Tom, it's interesting that you say that, because she was actually 8 months pregnant filming a lot of this.
Wow.
So they had to do, and it's so interesting because we've watched so much TV where an actress has been pregnant, and it's really had a big effect on their costumes and how
All
they're
those
directed and stuff.
handbags in Scandal.
Yeah. And I just feel like the way that they costumed her, I mean, these are some of the very best costumes I've ever seen in a period drama, especially hers. And the fashion bloggers Tom and Lorenzo had an interview with the costume designer Kazia Willika Mimone. I'm really sorry if I've totally messed up that pronunciation. But in the interview, she talked about how she made close to 5,000 costumes.
Fucking hell.
And some of them, you know, we only see for a second.
Yeah. And they're all just so exquisite. Like, really, one of the most exciting things about having a new episode of The Gilded Age to watch was, like, what are they going to wear?
Yeah, and I do think hers, because she was obviously, like, new money, so it was very ostentatious, and she had huge hats, huge capes, huge amounts of embellishment. Like, everything was just more and more and more.
Yeah.
Which is, you know, that kind of maximalism really appeals to me.
And, like, I'm pretty sure, you know, a lot of the costuming was kind of anachronistic, and that's absolutely fine with me, because, like, you want, when you're watching these kind of period dramas, to get that kind of sense of, like, wow at the, like, opulence of these expensive costumes. It's got to the point now where, you know, we as 21st century people watching it, if you produce a historically accurate gown, you might not get that wow factor, and so you're not actually reproducing the kind of sensations that somebody at the time, you know, would have had when they see these, like, rich people walking by or whatever.
Yeah, and I think as well, these are outfits that, you know, I haven't really watched a lot of American set period dramas, so I haven't seen this particular era of clothing in TV before. But I think it's very interesting that the theme for the Met Gala this year is Gilded Glamour. Would love to see Carrie Coon and Christine Baranski and Audrey McDonald going. But
Yeah.
I think, you know, a lot of people will be looking to the Gilded Age for inspiration for this. Did you have a favourite Bertha outfit?
It's really hard to pick just one, but there's one monochrome one with, like, silver sparkly tassels on it, which is really incredible.
That she wears for dinner with Mamie Fish and Ward McAllister. I think that's in the Newport episode.
Yeah.
Yeah, that one's so good. I was obsessed with her outfit in the first episode, the blue one with that huge big feather on the hat. That was incredible. I also loved, I think it was the same episode where she wore that like really vivid red dress.
Yeah.
And it had like black details on it, and then she had like a big cape with it as well. There was also the finale dress where it was like, where she came down the stairs in the big white gown with a huge train. It had all the black like leaves on it.
So incredible.
That was stunning. Also, just like, I thought it was a really nice costuming touch in the end of the Newport episode where she was getting kicked out of Mrs. Astor's house and she had to go out through like the back where they had all the chickens, and she was wearing like white and red like a rooster.
Yeah.
I thought that was, anyway, I was just obsessed with all her outfits, but I also just thought her performance was really good, like where she threw like the breakfast tray on the floor in bed, and
Yeah.
also loved when her and her husband had sex,
Yeah.
when he asked, "Can I stay with you tonight?" And she said,
Oh, yeah.
like, "But of course," or something.
I really liked their relationship. We should talk a bit about George, her husband.
Hubba, Morgan Spector.
Yeah, and
He was really great in The Plot Against America, by the way. If you haven't seen that
yeah.
show. Another period drama, very different though.
They had a really great marriage and relationship. Like, part of his storyline was like being tempted by this evil maid who was like looking to
Turner.
get a leg up and a leg over.
Oh my God, Tom.
And I mean, I'm not going to give him like loads of credit for not succumbing to that, obviously, but like what you saw with George and Bertha was like this couple who are like both equally ambitious in different spheres, but spheres that like complemented each other, and there were ways in which they could help each other and work out each other's problems and stuff. And like, I mean, I do get that like he was probably evil, right? He's like making
A robber baron.
Yeah, he's making like millions of dollars, and you don't generally make that by being like a really nice guy, but still.
But Tom, they were couple goals.
Well, yeah, they were like really charmingly written and incredibly acted, I think, by both.
Particularly in the early episodes. Like, my favourite moment, and I know this is like disgusting capitalistic excess, was when he went to the bazaar and bought out every stall.
Yeah. But it's okay because it was for charity.
True. And it was because of his love for his wife.
Yeah.
His storylines otherwise were quite intentionally vague and difficult to follow and boring, because they were all kind of about like mysterious financial things. But I did enjoy seeing Dorota from Gossip Girl make an appearance.
Yeah, it kind of reminded me of like the kind of storylines they had in Poldark that would be about like the prices of copper.
Yeah.
And like
all the storylines about the mine in Poldark.
Yeah. And you're like,
snooze.
I can tell that the show wants me to get like very exercised about what's going on, but I'm actually going to wait until it's resolved and I'm told how to feel about it.
Exactly. Since you mentioned Poldark, let's talk about Larry.
Oh, yeah.
This is Harry Richardson, who has been dispatched in from Poldark.
Yeah, where he played Drake Khan.
With one of the worst accents on that show. Probably far and away the worst, actually.
Yeah, probably. And his
accent on this is so much better. And he's British.
Yeah, I mean, I do feel like with both of these accents I've seen, I still have like no clue what this person is like. I feel like they're both quite fake. But
well, Tom, he loves architecture.
Yeah, that's his main love. But I think that another object of his affections is going to be the fake Gummer Girl.
I did wonder how the Gummer Girl felt about the moment where he was telling his dad that he wanted to make a name for himself and didn't want to be a nepotism baby.
Yeah.
But I definitely feel like season 2 is going to be a love triangle between Marion, Larry, and Mrs. Chamberlain's estranged son in Chicago. We'll get on to Mrs. Chamberlain in a moment. But before we do, we've got to talk about poor old drippy Gladys.
Oh, yeah. This is the Russell daughter, who Oscar Van Ryn has his sights set on as a possible beard and cash cow.
And I do like the actress that plays her, Taissa Farmiga. She was great in American Horror Story. But the way she's written here, like, she's like really childish. Her mom doesn't want her to come out until she's popular enough to throw a ball that loads of people will attend. And I was so relieved by the time we actually got that ball.
Yeah. Even
though the kind of mechanics around getting Mrs. Astor to attend didn't make like a huge amount of sense. Like, why would she care? But I enjoyed that like silly little dance, the quadrille or whatever that they did, and those fun costumes. And I was sort of interested in, like, right after that when Oscar was like, dance with me now, when she was like, I'm no longer interested in people telling me what to do. And I was like, ooh, are we moving into a new era for Gladys Russell?
Disobedient era.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would definitely like to see that in season 2. It would make her character a lot more interesting, I think.
On to the Scotts, the most interesting character on the show, Peggy Scott, played by Danae Benton. There was a really interesting piece in the New York Times a few weeks ago where they talked about how Julian Fellowes really wanted to address the fact that it had been less than 2 decades since slavery had been abolished, and he wanted to look at the wealthy families who were emerging in society, but he didn't know how to figure out a way to get Peggy to stay with Marion in her aunt's home. So they had originally planned for her to be like a domestic servant to Marion, and Danae Benton, who was to play her, she found that idea quite uncomfortable, and she was like, oh, well, I feel like we've seen enough black women play that role in television. And then, so this was all happening around spring of 2020 when it was preparing to shoot its first season, and then obviously shut down in March because of the pandemic, and then all of the Black Lives Matter protests had that big resurgence during the summer. And after that happened, then Danae Benton said she kind of felt she wanted to speak out, and she wrote a letter to HBO asking for changes to be made to the show, in which she asked that there would be some more Black women added to the creative team and like writing the show and stuff, which, you know, apparently HBO were already in the process of doing that. But I thought that was really interesting that, you know, because of that, it meant that she was then written as a secretary, and they really expanded the way, I mean, they said they were always planning on having her parents be part of the show, but I feel like this obviously is a much stronger storyline for her having done that.
Yeah, and like I think it made for not only much more interesting storyline for her and for her interactions with Marion and Aunt Agnes and Aunt Ada, but also like going into the servants, kind of the downstairs world, because we see her go in and there's like this real like
animosity.
Yeah, and like obviously part of that is that like she's not like domestic servant in the same way that they are, that she is like a secretary, that she is there to write letters and to help correspondence and things like that. Whereas, you know, you get the impression from it that they would perhaps be a lot more comfortable or familiar with her coming in as like a maid or in a different kind of role.
Yeah, and I think since you mentioned her relationship with Marion, one of my favourite bits was that fucking scene with the old boots.
Oh my god, yeah.
When Marion thinks she's doing her this really generous favour and goes to visit her home in Brooklyn to cheer her up and brings her these old boots.
Because she has just assumed that her parents are like destitute, and that's why he doesn't want her to meet them, because she's embarrassed of the poverty of her family, and she turns up with this bag of old boots. And like it actually, like I thought of that when you were talking about like the show's approach to her character initially, that it was like, well, we'll have her in as a maid, and then it's like that's like the equivalent of giving her a bag of old boots. You know. So
funny.
It's like, yeah, that was a great scene. It was like so obviously intentionally like cringe making, so awkward, and I felt it was like done so well.
It was like one of the few times where Louisa Jacobson's kind of naivety, would you say, kind of actually worked in favour of the scene.
Her like stilted form of acting.
Exactly, yes. That was such a good scene. I didn't like love how they kind of picked up from that. I thought it was good in like the immediate episode afterwards that Peggy was like, we're not friends.
Yeah. And
like kind of trying her to piss off. But that Marion would keep like coming and visiting her when she was like writing, and
yeah,
you know, that wasn't my favorite, but I did generally like Peggy's storylines the best, in particular her writing for that newspaper and her relationship with her hunky editor.
Yeah.
I have to say I am a little bit disappointed now that she seems to be stuck with this rather dull lost baby storyline.
I know. I really hope that it doesn't like totally take us away from her writing and her relationship with this editor guy.
It seems like such an off-roading, like it seemed like we were going in quite an interesting direction, and this just takes us completely off the track.
Like, I already thought that her dad was like really annoying. I didn't need him to become like a total evil monster.
And boy, was he. Yeah. I mean, it was so funny that he kept that extremely incriminating note just in his pocket, and then poor Audra McDonald having to act that scene of like finding and reading the note. It's
yeah.
Thank God you have this Broadway superstar to do this scene for you. But yeah, I loved Peggy. Also loved how much Agnes seemed to prefer Peggy to Marion.
Yeah.
I thought it was such a fucking cop-out that Agnes was like, oh, I can't fire this evil racist maid Armstrong because I'm too old to train up someone else, so sorry Peggy, you can move out if you want. Because I liked their scenes together a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I sort of wonder how that might develop in season 2, because I do think they were so good together in scenes that I would thought the show would want them to be back in them. But I mean, yeah, I was like so annoyed with that decision, but I did feel like probably this is like the kind of decision that would have been made.
I don't know. Like, it's not as if she's like Maggie Smith's age. Like, she's not that old. How much training does it need? Like, she just sits in her drawing room all day.
I think that is kind of an excuse, though. You know, I think it's just the case that, you know, she's so mindful of what people think and society she keeps and stuff. And it's like, you know, would someone in her position be like, oh, I can't like fire the white person because I prefer the company of the black person, or I think the black person is better at their job and not in the wrong? And, you know, even though that is the right thing to do, is it just like because of that time and the prevailing attitudes that she's too scared?
I do think it stood out to me because I think Julian Fellowes kind of has a habit of like presenting his upper class people as very benevolent.
Oh, yeah.
And that, you know, it's not really, I mean, it's not our main cast who are the ones being racist to Peggy or her family, or who are being snobby to lower class people, that they are just such, you know, even when they can be kind of spiky like Agnes.
It's in a humorous way.
And really, she's got a soft centre.
Yeah, and I mean, Julian Fellowes is so guilty of this kind of thing where all the servants are actually quite proud of the family they work for, you know? And they actually really value working for a family with a good position in society.
Yeah, it's so funny.
And it's like, he has that in like everything that I've seen of his anyway. And I mean, it's such bullshit. It's such a bullshit kind of attitude to take, but that is how he defines the upstairs downstairs dynamic.
Let's talk about the downstairs. We can start on the Van Ryn side since we've already talked a little bit about Armstrong. So she's the bitch racist maid who tries to get Peggy thrown out.
Yeah.
Which backfires. Although actually not that much because she still gets to keep her job.
I know. And like, I mean, I know we needed her as like an antagonist for this situation, but like, I don't give a shit about this woman, even as a villain. Like,
that episode where we saw her visiting her mum was so boring and just did nothing to humanize her for me. I still thought she was a nasty piece of work.
Yeah, exactly. But like, you know, we didn't come out of that thinking this is a nasty piece of work who is like interesting. You're just like, oh, you've just given her like a difficult home situation or a difficult family situation. So yeah, I would have been more than happy to see her out the door.
I feel like she's sort of meant to fit into the kind of O'Brien role from Downton Abbey that Siobhan Finneran played, but this actress can't match Siobhan Finneran and the writing isn't there.
And also the fact that maybe like she's very solitary. Like, she's a evil racist wagon, but she doesn't have like a partner in crime. There doesn't seem to be any like big plan. And I get that that's the point. She just like doesn't like this woman because she's black and she doesn't trust her. And like that is in a lot of ways the point, I guess, of this story. But in terms of like television, like it would be good to see her interacting with more people to try and like, I don't know, just flesh it out a bit more.
I think part of the reason maybe, or, you know, one way of looking at the reason why Agnes didn't fire Armstrong was that it sort of helped to explain the kind of illogical decision not to fire Bannister after he went behind her back to work at the Russell's house.
Yeah. Because
that would seem like a pretty cut and dried case of you losing your job.
Yeah.
But for some reason didn't happen.
I know. And like, I was really surprised because, yeah, if you just like decide to skip out on your job to go and make money somewhere else,
especially someone who your manager like despises
and who lives just across the road, like, but generally I did like Bannister, the bad butler, but good butler, like the best butler in the world, but like he was, you know, also naughty.
I liked the butler showdown.
Yeah.
Between him and Church.
Yeah.
And when he went over to the Russell house and just scoffed at everything so obnoxiously.
Yeah.
I think everybody likes those kind of, you know, in real life it's disgusting, but in Julian Fellowes stuff, it's quite entertaining to watch. Did not at all enjoy Bridget, the Irish maid, the other racist one downstairs.
Yeah.
Oh my God. What an accent.
Yeah. And when we got the scenes of her with Jack the footman, who also had a nutty American accent.
His crazy, like, Newsies accent was beyond. The two of them together, those scenes were almost unwatchable.
That scene where she follows him to his mother's grave and then he tells her a Wikipedia entry about a, like, lesser-known great fire. Like...
I'm sure you guys won't be surprised to hear that Tom's been reciting that scene to me all week. Yeah, I just feel like none of them really, with the exception of Bannister, I feel like he was the strongest on the Van Ryn side.
And he is a Downton veteran. Because that actor played the king in the Downton movie.
Okay. I mean, this is probably our bias for British period dramas showing that he's the only one that we liked. Although I actually thought the Russell side had some good characters too. Like, I thought Church was a good, entertaining butler, and he was American. Also,
you loved the slutty maid.
Oh my God, Turner. She was on another level.
Yeah, that was quite a performance.
When we were talking about the way that Bridgerton is unlike other traditional period dramas because of the sex, well, that's what she was trying to bring.
Yeah.
Or maybe that's what Julian Fellowes was trying to bring to Gilded Age through Turner. Because the scene where she shows up naked in George's bed.
Outrageous.
And spreads her legs and talks about offering him a sanctuary is vulgar in the extreme. It's so funny.
So funny.
Borderline obscene, Julian Fellowes. And I loved it. I thought it was so funny.
And
why didn't she get fired for that? That was crazy.
Why did he decide to, like, keep that to himself? And, like, I mean, I did love when he just kind of sent her packing, but I was, like, worried that they were setting us up for...
He didn't really send her packing, though. He was just like, go downstairs.
Yeah, but that was, like, definitely not the response she was expecting.
But I did like then in the later episode when Marion came to Bertha to say that Turner had been caught having, you know, an inappropriate relationship with someone, but she didn't say who. And I was thinking, like, oh my God, is Bertha going to figure out that Turner's been coming on to her husband?
Yeah.
But she didn't. Although, I feel like maybe we haven't seen the last of Turner. She's going to come back for revenge, right?
Oh, yeah. I mean, there's definitely a lot of storylines in this show that sort of, if they don't come back to them, then it's like, what the fuck was the point?
No,
what was
true.
the point of this?
True.
Like, for example, the bald man.
The valet.
Yeah. Who sort of periodically goes and stalks this woman, and we don't yet know what their relationship is. And I thought it was an absolutely, like, hilarious thing to be like, this is a storyline which is so intriguing that we're going to have to set it up in season 1 and carry it on to season 2.
His name is Watson.
Right.
And I think, that woman is probably his daughter.
Yeah, I think so as well. Although she didn't appear to recognise him at all. But maybe he hasn't seen her for a very long time or something.
I think that's potentially an interesting storyline. You know, certainly more interesting than, like, I'm in love with this rich woman who can't give me the time of day in public or whatever. But I was more confused than intrigued by that storyline this season. So I'm hoping that they do something a little bit more interesting with it next time around.
We loved, though, Monsieur Boudin.
As I'm sure all British people did, Tom was hooting and hollering
at this crazy accent.
Even more the appearance of the real French chef who got so shit-faced he couldn't cook. Because that's what French people are like, isn't it?
I know. That was so funny. Not because I find that kind of stereotype hilarious, but because I was like, this is basically... I mean, this is the most cliched jokes English people make. You know? It's like, oh, the French are always pissed. I was like... A true example of, like, Julian Fellowes putting his foot down and being like, okay, fine, you can give me advice on the black stuff in it, but the Frenchman, he's going to be drunk.
So funny. I did think, actually, that was quite a funny moment.
Yeah.
Monsieur Monsieur Baudin having like an even more ridiculous accent when he was trying to speak as like a guy from Wichita than as a Frenchman.
A lot better kind of downstairs content over at the Russell's house.
Just in general, the Russells, everything that's going on at the Russells. Let's talk about the various other wealthy people that we liked. Let's start with Mrs. Chamberlain, played by Jean Triplehorn. Love her.
Amazing. Yeah.
Some incredible costumes on her as well.
Incredible hats.
Huge hats.
Huge hats. She was defined by her hats, I think, her character. She had such incredible, like, plumes of feathers.
That's where she was hiding all her secrets.
Yeah. Yeah, I really like this character and her mysterious past.
It was a
kind of
strange
built up and
reveal,
built up,
though.
and then the reveal was, like, a bit weird, yeah.
Because it was like, oh my God, what has she done? And then the way, because originally Ada explained it quite cryptically and it sort of sounded like, okay, well, that's not really a big deal. And then later when the full story came out, it was like, well, why couldn't you fucking just say that? Like, this is a way better story. But it had kind of been such an anticlimax the first time that it sort of dulled the impact when we eventually learned that she had had an affair with a married man and had his child.
Yeah. And she was there as like a cautionary tale about the perils of crossing society or acting in ways that, you know, they don't approve of. But she was also there to be like, if you love someone, it's worth it.
Even though the advice that she gave Marion seemed to suggest that she knew that Marion and Rex didn't really love each other.
Well, I guess she was there to be like, you're an adult now. I'm not going to tell you what to do. But look, I really love my husband. No one would talk to us, but that was okay because we liked talking to each other. If you find someone like that, then that's great. But like, you need to go into this with your eyes open. And she also knew that she couldn't like open Marion's eyes for her.
Yeah. I liked that she was this kind of confidant for Marion, but again, the actress playing Marion just couldn't give us enough to make those scenes really sing. I did like that Mrs. Chamberlain had this like really impressive art collection, and then Marion came over with this like sad little paint by numbers jobby that she had done and was like, oh, I've just realised it looks as if I'm asking you to exhibit my little trifle next to all your old masters.
Like, yeah, it's exactly what you're asking her to do.
This doesn't make it any better. It's still so fucking weird. Oh, that was so funny.
Yeah.
But yeah, I am excited for Mrs. Chamberlain's storyline next season because I feel like that estranged son in Chicago is going to show up, and Tom, I think he's going to be a hunk.
Yeah. And unfortunately, he's probably going to have to do a lot of scenes with Marion.
Well, maybe she'll have punched things up by next season. Then I wanted to finish by talking about the two Broadway legends that we haven't already mentioned. Donna Murphy playing Mrs. Astor, Caroline Astor, who was a real-life socialite.
I didn't realise that she was real life.
Yeah, her and Ward McAllister were both real. And he's the other one we want to mention, played by Nathan Lane.
Oh my God.
Incredible stuff.
His accent is absolutely perfect.
He came in and said, I am going to put on this big stupid mustache and chew up all the scenery. And boy, did he.
And in such a good way. Like, I absolutely loved every scene that he was in, and you would often hear his voice before you even saw him, and that was incredible too.
Just so good.
Yeah.
As I was saying earlier, I wasn't totally convinced that Mrs. Astor would give enough of a shit about Bertha's threats to actually go to her party, but I don't really care because I like the idea of her and Bertha either working together or being enemies, being frenemies, whatever. I just love Carrie Coon, really liked Donna Murphy in this, very excited for more of them next season. Hope Nathan Lane comes back too, of course.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, like now that they've met, they can actually be enemies in the same room. Even if they don't, like, you know, there's a hint that they might work together, which would be very exciting. But, like, this whole season has been them enemies, but never together. So we don't get to see this kind of, like, sparring and the tension that they have, which I really liked.
Honestly, I would have liked if they'd kind of built up that tension a bit more. Because I felt like in the last episode, when she was suddenly, like, I need you to come to my party and I need you to make the Van Ryns come to my party as well. When I felt like she didn't give a shit about the Van Ryns the whole season.
Yeah.
Although we did love the scene when Agnes barged into the lunch.
One of 2 times that she left the house?
And the 2 times that they met. I saw the Fug Girls defined the build-up to Carrie Coon and Christine Baranski being in a scene together as this show's version of sexual tension. And I thought that was a very good description. And boy, was it, because it was a terrific build-up. And the payoff was pretty good. Yeah. I do hope we'll get a little bit more of them together next season. Would also love to see Audra McDonald have any reason to be in a scene with any of these people. But
yeah.
What do you want from season 2?
I mean, I want more of the same, because for me, I found this show to be the kind of mix of like boring or like low stakes storylines with very outrageous and over the top moments. It's like almost like a distilled version of Downton, all the things that I loved about Downton. So I think I want them to keep doing what they're doing.
Yeah, I feel like similarly, but I also feel like they've got both way better and way worse actors.
Yes, yeah.
Way worse being Louisa Jacobson and like half of the downstairs cast, and way better being all the aforementioned Broadway people. Everybody upstairs, basically.
Yeah.
Is terrific.
And you just have so many personalities amongst that cast that will just make for like incredible scenes going forward, I think.
Yeah, and even though the dialogue can be pretty lousy sometimes,
and the storylines are transparent to the point of being like barely even storylines,
I really don't mind, and I still enjoy it so much, and I think it's so gorgeous.
Yeah.
I can't wait to see what costumes we have next season. And I honestly wouldn't mind if they repeated some of these if we got to get a better look at them.
Yeah, some of the ones that we only saw very, very briefly.
But yeah, season 2 cannot come soon enough, honestly. I cannot wait. But for now, I'm going to have to make do with Sanditon season 2.
Oh, yes.
And whatever else period dramas come our way. If you have any other recommendations of anything new or recent, we'd love to hear them.
Yeah, send them over.
So we're in a drought now.
Yeah.
But thank you so much for listening, and we will be back in a couple of weeks.
Bye.
Bye.
It's not too much.
My dear Mrs. Russell, nothing is ever too much for me.